Welcome to the Health Coach Nation podcast. I am your host, Haley Rowe, and today we're talking about 11 ways that I leveled up my entrepreneur and wellness identity in 2025. And the reason for that is because I know many of you want to be a successful coach and business owner or a service provider of some kind, but you don't see yourself that way yet. You're like, I am at ground zero. I am a newbie. And the way we see ourselves, we call it identity, is very important in the kind of actions you take and the kind of results you produce. And for me personally, I see myself as a business owner and an entrepreneur, but there's always new levels that I want to achieve. And that means new sales levels, that means new impact levels, that means new systems I want to put into my business. And so one thing that I'm always thinking about is how, when I get to that result, how am I as a person? What am I saying? What am I thinking? What am I doing? What kind of habits do I have? What am I wearing? How do I treat people around me? All of that, because it's one thing to just say you want to achieve a certain goal, but if you don't see it as possible and you don't see yourself as that person who's embodying that goal, then you're not going to get there. So we're going to talk about that today. And before we get into that, this is the first, at the time of recording this is the first podcast of 2026. And I'm actually recording it live and it will be repurposed. But if you're listening, Happy New Year. Happy belated New Year if you're listening to this later on. And I'd love to hear from you. If you want to reach out via DM, I'm on Instagram at Haley, HAILEY _ ROWE. And I'd love to hear from you. What is one identity shift you're making this year? What's one goal you're working towards? And who do you want to become this year? Because in the inner circle, one of the things we do at the end of the year is I have an entire guide for reflecting. And it breaks down everything from how did your marketing plan go this year to personal life questions. And it helps you get clear on what kind of goals you want to set, how you want to move forward, things like that. So even though we are in 2026, it's never too late to reflect. And if you haven't had a chance yet to do that and you want to use my guide, feel free to book a free call at haleyrowe.com and we can connect. And that can be included in your coaching experience because it's available for all my clients, both in actually the Inner Circle and the Work Smart Marketing Club. So it's just something that we do, and I do it myself. I go through the guide that I give my clients, and part of that is what generated this idea for this specific podcast topic, which is the 11 ways I changed up my identity when it comes to both who I am as an entrepreneur and who I am as somebody who pursues wellness and healthy lifestyle habits. So let's get into it. All right. The first thing I did, and this is going to sound silly, some of these are super random and super silly, but they are something that I think you might enjoy. So the first one is I actually invested in a makeup lesson last year. So what was happening was I was in a health program, and it was for my skin because I was having some really bad breakouts and acne and trying to transition off of a very high natural vitamin A supplement. It wasn't Accutane or anything like that, but just something that I didn't want to be taking long term. And I knew I had to get to the root of some of my health things. But while I was in it, part of what they told me in this program is you're going to go through what we call purges with your skin, meaning, you're going to have some bad breakouts because your body is adapting to the changes, and sometimes it has to get worse before it gets better, and blah, blah, blah. So I, as somebody who's an entrepreneur and on video a lot and on Zoom calls and all the things, was like, well, I want to make myself feel good about myself when I have to be in person places, but also online. And so I realized that I had always done my makeup just based on what I thought you're supposed to do, but I've never actually learned it as a skill. And I thought it would be really fun and a level up for me, because I usually never would spend money on something like that for myself. I would just be like, that's silly. I don't need that, and I was like, you know what? I think this is a level up. I'm going to give myself a luxury experience of a private makeup lesson. And I did it because I just because I wanted to. So sometimes when it comes to leveling up your identity and seeing yourself as quote unquote worthy, it's deciding to do something that you want to do just because you want to do it, and not feeling like it's weird, and not like, normally I would be like, I need to wait until I have a whole group where I could hire this person and we could do it as like a girls' night, or I need to postpone that because, like, why, I got other important things to do. But one day, because I'm an entrepreneur and because I make my own schedule, on a Tuesday afternoon, I decided I wanted to do this makeup lesson, and it was like a level up for me because, again, normally I would never invest in something like that. I'd say it's silly. I'd put it off. And we, as business owners, becoming the kind of confident business owner you want to be, part of that is you are the asset. So investing in you, taking time for you, doing something that makes you look forward to the day and gets you going and gets you inspired, that kind of stuff does matter. And a lot of times we end up putting it off or thinking it's not important. And I didn't. I did it this time. So that was the first one. And I learned some good tips. Do I always implement them? Not always. Sometimes I do it the lazy way, but I really enjoyed it because now I have that skill, and now I feel like I can do better than I was doing on my makeup. Okay, the second thing, and this has to do with what I just said too, but I invested in a health program. I work with so many wellness professionals, and I try to actually work with several different health people sometimes because I have a lot of clients who I want to use their services. And I also just like knowing what's going on in the industry. So throughout the years, every year, I pretty much do some kind of health testing or work with one of my clients or hire somebody to help me. Now, this time I did hire one of my clients, and it was amazing. But I also wanted to be a part of a group program, and I invested in one because I had listened to their podcast and I loved it, and wanted to do that both so that I can, again, better help my clients by seeing the ins and outs of how you're led through a program, how, the client experiences using Practice Better, which is a software a lot of my clients use, which we'll put in the show notes. But I just wanted to go through a group community type of program. Why? Because I also lead a group program, more in a business coaching sense, but I know the power of community. And I wanted that for myself this year for when things got hard, when I didn't want to do the health habits that I wanted to do, when I didn't want to show up for my business because I was embarrassed of how I looked that day or whatever. So with my skin, because it was a skin program. So anyways, I did it, and it was one of the best, honestly, investments I could have ever made, not just in my health, but honestly, my business, because it gave me more confidence to show up on the days I didn't feel like it. I felt like I had a support network to go to when I didn't want to show up. I also felt like it gave me more confidence in general. So that translates to your business, right? So for those of you who are health coaches who listen to this podcast and you think, oh, well, my service isn't as powerful as business coaching or something like that because it doesn't create a direct ROI for your bank account. But the truth is your health and your confidence and your self-image all relates to your health, right? It is the most important thing. If you don't have your health and you don't have energy, and or you feel really self-conscious all the time because of something appearance-wise with your health, there's the inside health stuff and the outside health stuff. Both are important. Obviously, the inside health stuff is more important. But my point is, in today's world, people do need to feel confident about themselves if they want to put themselves out there. And so you, by giving people better habits where they feel better, they're more excited about life, they either feel like they look better or they just feel better more from a feeling standpoint on the inside, that is a very worthy investment. And I was so glad that I did that. And so one thing I want to encourage you guys to do, if you're listening to this and you want to level up your sales identity or your entrepreneur identity, is to remember that by you hiding, by you not making offers, you're giving somebody like me, who I felt like it was the best investment I made all year, you're like skimping me of that opportunity because you're afraid to show it to me. You're afraid to be visible. You're afraid to make offers. So I was so glad I did it. I came out the other side of this program with, yes, better skin, but so many other better health habits that I could have really probably done some damage if I continued with some of the habits I had, as far as like bedtime hours and I made a lot of nutritional changes. I made a lot of changes to my stress management. And I really feel like if I didn't do that program, I don't think I would have made those changes. So that was another huge level up for me. And now I see myself as someone with a very strong, healthy lifestyle, very self-motivated. I don't need motivation. It's like just because I love the way I feel. I love feeling good. And that was really powerful. The next thing that I did to level up my identity is a new business program as well. So mentors, working with mentors, being in containers where you can hear other entrepreneurs and their struggles and realize you're not crazy and see how they're embodying who they want to be. That is just constant mindset juice that just gets you going and keeps you going. And it also makes you feel like you can go out into the world that feels so dangerous and scary and try things and fail and have a place to go and come back to, where you can kind of report, you can get your next steps, you can feel like you're safe. So I think that's really important, because many of us, when we become entrepreneurs, we feel like it's scary and dangerous, and we don't have like a support network to come back to. So giving yourself that gift can be very valuable. The next thing is I did more morning workouts or walks or yoga instead of later in the day. I used to be the kind of person who worked out at like 8:00 at night sometimes, and I was tired, and it was the end of the day. And one thing that I learned is when I do like an earlier morning yoga class or something like that, the whole day I am just on fire. My ideas are so good. I'm so focused. I'm so energized for my clients. So now it's not something that I'm rigid about. I definitely have a flexible schedule, which is one of the beauties of being an entrepreneur. But I like to factor in nowadays some morning yoga or morning workouts. And it gave me this new identity of like, ooh, I can be a morning person. I am, I can, it just is a great way to power up your day. So one of the things that I just want to highlight too, with all these identity shifts, is it shifts. We need to drop the label of I'm the kind of person who, and then whatever we fill in that's not serving us or that's making our life more challenging or not supporting our goals, we got to be willing to let go of that part of our identity. So I used to say I'm not a morning person, or I used to say things like, I don't deserve to invest in myself in that way with that business program or whatever. But we have to be willing to drop that if we really want to get to our next level. And by practicing the thing that you're afraid of, you quickly adopt the new identity of, oh, I can be the kind of person to do that. Okay, the next habit or thing that I leveled up is, this is going to sound silly, but I bought StreamYard. So I podcast and I do lives, and I usually use the free StreamYard version of that software so that I can just go live with guests. It's a tool that you can use. And I kept putting off buying it because I was like, oh, I don't need it. But what happened once I did buy it was I started taking my interviews more seriously. This is so weird, but I did. I just started being like, oh, well, I'm paying for StreamYard now, so I need to use my microphone for the podcast. I can't not use my microphone, or I have to, prepare my interview questions because now I'm a paid user of StreamYard. So again, is it really that I bought StreamYard that is the answer, the magic sauce? No, it's just that by investing in it, it renewed my sense of purpose with the podcast and wanting to make it more intentional and wanting to put more into it because I was paying for something to make it better. right? It just kind of was a trajectory to be like, oh, I want to make my podcast better. So that was another one. The next one was I started to dress nicer for my calls. So if you charge high ticket and you work with clients online and you work from home, you still need to show up for them and look professional and be professional, in my opinion. It doesn't matter that you work from home. You still are meeting with a client who's paying you a lot of money, and you need to show up for them. Okay. Now, I'm not saying you need to like be all do your makeup perfectly and have a fancy hairdo or whatever, but I am saying that when you look good, you perform well, as my mom says. That is her quote. Look good, perform well. And I really do believe that when you are sitting in your sweatpants, and don't get me wrong, you can be a party on top, sweatpants on the bottom, but you're wearing a sweatpants, you're wearing a hoodie, you're in the corner, and that's how you're showing up for your call, it's going to probably impact your state. You know how Tony Robbins talks about your state? Like your posture impacts your state of how you show up. What you're wearing impacts your state of how you show up. How you're talking and how fast you're talking impacts how you're showing up. So to me, I started to try to wear nicer shirts. That's about it. But to me, it was enough to drive more professionalism. And that is one thing that I did. And like I told you, some of these are going to be silly, but this is literally my reflection out loud. Okay, another one is I fully took advantage last year of my entrepreneur flexible schedule and not delaying having a flexible schedule until I earned it or things like that. So in the past, I would beat myself up if I planned, and I know this sounds dumb, but like planned one of my orthodontic appointments during work hours, because we're like, no, that's the work day. You need to be home ready to go with your clients, and you can't do that. That's just not even an option. And I think for a time in my business, it was a good thing, because a lot of times when we're business owners, we make our own rules. You can get a little too relaxed with yourself, and you can kind of be like, oh, I'm just gonna, if you don't have any boundaries, it can be very easy to not work on your business. For me, I've never had that problem. I've always wanted to work on my business, and I actually got to the point where it's probably a little too rigid. And the last year, I realized, no, I can be flexible, and I can work my own hours when I want to, and I can, schedule that important appointment during the workday, and it's nothing catastrophic is going to happen. And I think it was about building trust with myself that I wasn't going to drop the ball or not work on my business or procrastinate or whatever. And that was a good shift, because it shows me that we've gotten to a point in my business where it has gotten more flexible, and I can adapt the rules with myself and not be so rigid. And so I think that's a part of my new identity, my entrepreneur identity for 2026, is being flexible, being adaptable, pivoting when I need to, changing the schedule when I need to, and being okay with that. Okay, the next one is leaning into stuff that I did not want to do first thing in the day. So this is a new habit I formed that to me levels up my identity, because it makes the rest of my days easier, and it makes me more productive. And it is something where I'm doing the hard things, and I see myself as someone who could do hard things without putting it off. So what I mean is, first thing in the morning, most of us like to have a morning routine and do the whole shebang, and that is great. But some days it just feels so good to do something really hard in your business that you've been putting off, and start with that first. And so many of us, when business gets hard, we want to dip out, or we want to blame overwhelm and say, I'm overwhelmed, so I can't do anything. Or I'm overwhelmed, so I need to get clear before I do anything. But really, the hard thing, you probably know what it is. And see it as a growth opportunity, and put it first in the day, and show yourself you're a badass, and it builds confidence. And it also shortens the gap of thinking about the person you want to be and actually being the person you want to be. So shorten the gap as many times as you can between having something on your list that's hard and actually doing it. Shorten that time gap that it sits there. Because the longer it sits there, the more excuses you're going to come up with for why you can't do it, why it's so hard, all of that. But the quicker you get at being able to do hard things and showing yourself you can do that, the more leveled up you become. Okay, the next thing is going scroll free. So what I mean by this is truly honoring my word about not scrolling through social media at certain times of the day or just for certain time periods. So I pretty much use social media for business and then checking the reels that my fiance, my friends, and my sister send me. Only one sister, every week. Okay, so I do check those, but scrolling I don't do much of unless it's to look at my clients' posts and then do my own posts on my own social media channels. And to me, that's an important part of the identity I want to have because number one, it gets you out of comparison-itis. Number two, it keeps you focused. Number three, we all know social media is pretty bad for our brains. And I do have a couple mentors who I may look at their posts from time to time because I find their posts actually constructive, useful, things like that. But for the most part, scroll free is a good way to level yourself up and a way that I did in 2025. Okay, the next one is advocating for yourself. So this one, normally I try to avoid conflict of all kinds. I am a Libra. I don't know if many of you guys follow that, or I mean, I'm not super strict, like really into that or anything, but Libras tend to like balance and peace and fairness. And I don't love conflict or arguing with people or anything like that. And so, but there were cases in 2025, and I'll tell you more on the podcast at some point, but where I had to advocate for myself medically, and it was uncomfortable. And I had to ask hard questions, and I had to prepare myself to potentially be a little gaslit. And I had to be nervous. And it was hard. And it is something where, though, I am getting better at the skill of communicating my needs, communicating, my questions clearly, and not taking no for an answer, not avoiding it just because it's uncomfortable. So if you are trying to, as an entrepreneur, be somebody who is achieving your goals, sometimes you have to have uncomfortable conversations, whether that's with a team member, whether that's with a client, and you have to be ready to advocate and communicate and develop that skill. So that was something that I worked on a lot in 2025. And then the other thing that I did in 2025 that made me realize I can drop the label that I'm bad at managing people is training my team better for certain lead gen tasks. So normally I would say, oh, no, I'm the only person who could do XYZ and do it in this way. But I really experimented and was willing for it to be bad at first before it got good, to let my team do certain things that I would used to only let myself do. And it is something where I had to drop the label that I'm bad at managing people, because that is something that truly I would say with a straight face and really believe. And I had to let that go if I'm going to get better. And so I opened myself up to, okay, if I was good at training my team, what would I say in this document to train them? What would I do in this meeting to prepare them? How would I check in on them throughout the week? What would that look like? And that was a good opportunity for me to get better at that. I still have a long ways to go, but definitely have gotten better there. And then the last one is saying no to ego boosting activities and doing what's actually the most important work. So in your business, there's going to be things that give you a dopamine hit, like, oh, I did a post and it got a like. Oh, I whatever. I commented on somebody's post and it's fun. But those are probably not the biggest things that are going to move your business forward. So sometimes I would catch myself being like, but I didn't do my post yet today. But there would be something more important and pressing that would impact my business more right now. And being able to shift to that, even though my brain wanted the dopamine hit of doing a post and getting to check out and do that instead of the other task, I got better at saying, no, that's an ego boosting activity right now. Not always. Obviously, posting is still good, but like sometimes it's more for just you want the dopamine hit of something. You just want to do busy work that feels good in the moment instead of what you know you're putting off, that you know your business really needs. And being able to shift to that is a really valuable skill. So I've been working a lot on that. So these are just a couple of things. So just to recap, the first one was the makeup lesson, but really the message behind that one is investing in yourself and doing something just because you want to do it and not putting it off and not saying you have to earn it or deserve it or whatever. The second one is investing in yourself. There was kind of two there. I invested in a health program and a business program. And that's really important because you become the kind of person who's like, oh, I am so in this. I am invested in this. I have skin in the game in this. I'm going to show up for this. But also it's about having your own back by giving yourself community, mentorship, all of that. Morning workouts or yoga in the morning or some kind of physical activity in the morning, becoming that morning person, how it sets the tone for your day, how it makes you more positive the entire day, how you can drop the label that you need to be motivated to work out, or you're a nighttime workout person, or you're not a morning person, dropping those labels. Also bought myself StreamYard, like I said, an investment that surprisingly just made me realize, oh, I'm a podcaster. I need to show up more legit for my podcast. Dressing nicer. Look good. That's Lori Rowe, my mom says. If you look good, you perform well. The next one, taking full advantage of having a flexible schedule and trusting myself that I can be adaptable with my time instead of saying, oh, I have to work or else during work hours. And if I don't, XYZ will happen. I drop that. Leaning into things I didn't want to do first in the day, doing the hard things first, making the gap between having something on my list and doing it a shorter gap. And then scroll free on social media, advocating for yourself when you need to, being able to confront conflict in a very factual, non-emotional, matter-of-fact way, training my team, and then lastly, saying no to the ego boosting or dopamine hit activities that are busy work and focusing more on what's the most important task. So if you have one that you want to share, I would love to know in the comments if you're watching live. And hopefully this helps you get some ideas about how could you level up your identity? What kind of things would you be doing? What kind of things would you be saying? What kind of things, what ways would you be advocating for yourself? What boundaries would you be setting if you were at the goal that you want to be at? And what could that look like this year? So often we think about the goal, but we don't think about who do we need to become? What kind of shifts do I have to make? What kind of habits do I have to have? And that really comes first and creates the achievement of the goal. So thank you so much for listening. If you are curious about time management skills and actually implementing certain things in your year, I do have a free weekly planning system that can help you break down your goal and actually put it on your list. So that's available at haleyrowe.com/time planning. And it'll help you with the implementation piece, prioritizing the top priority things instead of the busy work like we talked about. And it's really what I use to plan my entire week and business, to be honest. So it's a nifty little guide. All right. I will talk to you guys soon. Have a great day.